Hello, lovely students. Welcome to my solution on the Coding Challenge 3. Let's have a look at the solution and what you would have done in your coding. Okay, so you had to enter the UPC barcode on the first part of the question where you had to validate the barcode. You could use a memo or a rich edit to display, and there's your button, Validate Code. Let's go and have a look at the function that you had to write. So right at the top of the program, you had to create a function. Remember, a function starts with the name of the function, with the keyword function, followed by the name of the function. I'm bringing in a string value. It's a 12-digit barcode. So it will be declared as data type string, and the function is returning a Boolean value. Control, Shift, and C simultaneously. Press all three keys simultaneously. Control, Shift, and C. It takes you to the framework. So let's go to Validate Barcode. Right, so the first part of the program, I had to create I, which is my loop counter. I had to sum up the odd value. So the digit at every odd index had to be summed up. So I created I sum odd. The digit at every even index had to be summed up. So I created a variable called I sum even, and then I had to determine the total. I had to determine the check digit. I had to calculate it. And then this variable is to track the last digit of the barcode. And note that because I'm using the last digit and I'm checking if it is equal to, if the check digit is equal to the last digit, I need to declare this as an integer value, or else I cannot perform it in a comparison using an operator. So you must convert that last digit to an integer. I then initialized my two accumulators, the one for I sum odd and the one for I sum even. Both these variables are initialized to a value of 0. I last, all I'm doing is from the barcode using length. Remember, length will give me the last character of a string. And then I'm taking the last character and I'm converting it into integer so that I could get the last character as an integer value. I'm running a for loop from I to the length of the barcode -1 because I do not want to sum up the last digit. So minus the last digit, I'm going to run my loop from the first to the second last digit. I'm then checking when I is 1, I'm checking if I mod 2 is equal to 0. And in the first one, if let's use an example, it makes it easier. So let's use 6, 3, 9, 3, 8, 2, 3 zeros, 3, 9, 3. So that will give us an indication. So in this example, when I is 1, I'm checking if I mod 2 equals 0. It will be false, and then it goes into I sum odd. And I'm incrementing my odd counter by the actual value. And the actual value is barcode of index I when I is 1. The value of index 1 is 6. So I'm adding 6 to I sum odd, which is starting at 0. So my odd counter is going to be incremented by 6, and I odd at this time, I sum odd at this time is going to have a value of 6. Let's just write that down there so that we can do a mental trace. So there's your I sum odd, and that's going to have a value of 6 at this stage when I is 1. I go back up, I'm in my loop, and I now is incremented to 2. I now check, is 2 mod 2 equals to 0? At index 2 is my even number. So my remainder, 2 mod 2, is going to give me a remainder of 0. So I've now tracked the second value, which is an even number. So I then go and increment my even counter by the actual physical value at that index. So the even counter at this stage will now be I sum even will take on the value 3, because it's 0 plus 3 will give me, that counter will now have a value of 3. I hit the end and I go back up, and I is now 3. I then check, is 3 mod 2 equals 0? No, it's false. My remainder is 1. Remember, mod gives you the remainder. If the remainder is 0, it's even. If the remainder is 1, it's odd. I then increment my odd counter by the actual value stored at index 3. At index 3, it's at 9. The value is 9. So my odd counter is going to be incremented, and it's now going to add 9 to 6, and it will now be 15. So I sum odd now has the value 15. I hit the end and I go back up, and I is now 4. I'm now tracing and checking, if I mod 2 equals 0, is 4 mod 2 equals 0? Yes. 4 mod 2, my remainder is going to be 0. I then increment my even counter by the actual value of the character at that index. So at 4, it's 3. And I sum even is now going to be adding 3 plus 3, and that will now have the value 6. I do this for the continuation of the loop to the second last digit of the loop. So the loop is going to run from, in this particular example, the loop is going to start at 6 and it's going to end at index 11, which is the value 9. I then total, and to derive the total, it's my I sum odd, whatever your variable has at the end of the loop. I multiply that value by 3, and then I add the sum even. I add all the values of each time you sum up the even values. To get the check digit, it's the value 10 minus whatever your total value is, mod 10. I then check if the check digit, if this check digit value after you mod it by 10, you should get a value of I total mod 7 in this example should give you a value of 7. 10 minus 7 should give you a value of 3. And then you're checking, is the check digit, which is 3, equal to the last digit, which is 3? And if it is equal to the last digit, your function is going to return true. If it is not equal to the last digit, your function is going to return false. Remember, you use the keyword result, or alternatively, you can use the name of the function to send out the value. Also remember that the function is sending out a Boolean value that must be the same as what your result value is being assigned to. So this value, the data type, must be the same as that value. Okay, so now let's look at, we wrote this function, let's call it. Let's see how we're going to call it. So let's go back to design, validate code, Okay, so the first thing I needed to do is I wanted to enter or extract a user input from the keyboard using a T-edit. I'm now checking the value entered by the user. I'm validating it. And I'm checking, I needed a 12-digit value. If using length, the function length, if the length of the barcode is not equal to 12, then my program must display invalid barcode. It must be 12 digits. Or you could just prompt the user to enter something again by saying, enter a 12-digit barcode. I need to set the focus and take the cursor back to the T-edit. I need to clear the T-edit. If I'm now calling my function, remember this function was written with one parameter. It was declared with one parameter. So when I'm calling the function, I have to call the function with that parameter. So the value that's being entered, the value that I'm getting is barcode, the user input from the keyboard where the user entered the barcode. I'm then passing it as an argument to my function called validate barcode. Okay, I cannot call validate barcode by just saying if validate barcode equals true. If the function was written with one parameter, the function must be called with one parameter. Remember, this is your actual parameter. I'm checking because it is a Boolean function. I'm checking if the value is true. The function is returning a Boolean value. Also remember 3 ways to call a function. Call the function and assign it to a variable. Call the function in a condition or expression. And lastly, call the function in a display statement. In this example, I'm calling the function in a condition or expression using an if selection. If this condition returns true, which means the function returned a true value because it met the criteria for a valid barcode where the check digit was equal to the last digit of the barcode. If the check digit was equal to the last digit of the barcode, validate barcode, the function, will return true. So if the function returns true, it's going to print is a valid barcode. If the function returns false, it's going to print is not a valid barcode. Okay, so that was really a nice exercise to test all the techniques that you've studied using functions, using string handling, and also using validation techniques and skills. Okay, so let's look at the next question that we had to do. So this question was a small question. It only required you to write a function to validate the account number. The account number had to be a 7-digit number. It also had to start with a character. Let's go and have a look at it. So we're writing a function to do this. So let's look at the function that we would have declared for this. So there's your function, validate account number. So the name of the function is called validate account num. The function is bringing in a parameter, s account number. It's of data type string. The account number has alphabets and numbers, so it's alphanumeric. So I will declare it as data type string. And the function is returning a Boolean value. Right, so let's go and have a look. Remember, Control, Shift, and C. And let's look at validate, the function validate account number. Okay. All right. So the function is bringing in S account number. And I'm getting S account number when the function is called. The user is going to input the account number using an input box. That number will be mapped onto S account number. So whatever variable that you're passing as a parameter, that is the variable that you will be using inside your function. Remember, the function returns a Boolean value. That value must be exactly the same that is being returned by the function. That data type must match the return data type here. So note that in this example, I did it slightly different, where I created a Boolean variable called flag, and I could have initialized it to false, but I didn't. But you could use where you could just initialize it to false, and you could have said result is assigned flag. So there's so many ways, alternative ways of coding, but this is the one way that I have done it. So I'm checking if the length of the account number is 7 characters. I'm also checking using the AND operator. It must meet both conditions, must be true. I'm checking that the first character using the IN operator is a letter of the alphabet, which is small letters A to small letter Z. I'm also checking if it is capital letter A to capital letter Z. So I'm checking both cases to check if the first character is a letter of the alphabet. If it meets both criteria, then flag is initialized to true. And then I could have just said result is assigned flag. There was no need for the else statement if I initialized flag to false. So there are so many different ways of coding. It all depends how you want to code, and I'm fine with that too. Let's go and have a look at how we call this function. Writing functions like this in your program makes your task very simple, and you could write many functions to validate each check. So if I wanted to validate if a t-edit is empty, I could write a function to do that. If I wanted to validate if a user selected a value from a combo box, I could write a function to do that. And so then all I can do is just call the function each time I select a value from a combo box or select a value from a t-edit, invoke the function. Okay, so you can write a program with just multiple functions, just doing purely validation skills and techniques. Let's go and call this function. So validate account number. Okay. That makes it a little bit more clear for you to see the coding. All right. So all I'm doing here is I've created a variable, a string variable called saccountNum. I'm getting an account number using an input box, and the account number is a string value. I am calling my function validate account number. The value that the user entered, the account number, which is a 7-digit number. It's a 7-character number. Sorry, it's a 7-character number because it's alphanumeric. It has digits and characters. This function is going to tell me if it has both 7 characters and it starts with a digit. So if the function returns true, it's going to print account number is valid. If the function returns false, it's going to print account number is not valid. Remember when I call the function was written with one parameter. It was declared with one parameter being passed to the function. So when I call the function, I must call the function with one parameter. And I'm getting that value from saccountNumber. I'm passing it as an argument when I call the function validate account number. Because it is a Boolean function, I'm checking it in an if statement, and I'm checking if it is true. This is how you would call a Boolean function. The Boolean function is going to return true or false. And remember that this account number that's been entered, when this function is being called, it goes to that function and it sends this value to that function. Let's go and have a look at it. The function validate account number. So that account number is mapped onto this value, and that's how the value is brought into the function. Let's run both those programs and see what happens. Okay, let's go run. Okay, so for the first one, the UPC barcode, let's enter a barcode. I'm going to enter 639382393. Okay, so this is a barcode consisting of 12 digits. Validate the barcode, and it's going to say is a valid barcode. Let's add one more digit to it. Let's add 1. So it's consisting of 13 digits. Validate barcode, and it's going to tell you invalid barcode must be 12 digits, and it clears the T-edit and it sets your focus to the T-edit, allowing you now to enter another barcode. So let's enter another barcode. Okay, so validate barcode, and it's not a valid barcode. Remember, a valid barcode is when you add all the even digits and you add all the odd digits and you find the total and then you find the check digit must equal to the last digit for it to be a valid barcode. Okay, so now let's run validate account number. I'm just going to run this program again. Okay, so to validate the account number, I'm going to enter an account number. So we entered, it must be 7 digits. And let's enter 2020 and say okay, account number is valid. Let's enter one that is invalid. Let's enter 2020. Okay, so it's not a valid account number because it didn't start with a digit, and also it must have 7 characters. This was an amazing exercise. It tested so many different skills and knowledge, and I hope you thoroughly enjoyed it. Please revisit the exercise. If you didn't understand anything, you're welcome to send me a comment and ask me any questions via my comment, and I will readily respond and assist you where I can. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and follow me on my next video.